Well, good morning, everybody. And first of all, can I extend, on behalf of my deputy convener and members of the committee, both here and online, and officers, can extend a very warm welcome to you all to Grangemouth Community Education Unit, Abbots Road, today, 15th of January 2025. Apologies once again for the technical problems, but I'm quite sure we're all happy that our officers were able to get it fixed. In accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, it has been directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow remote attendance by elected members. The meeting will also be live streamed. Just go straight to the business and ask our officer for apologies.
Thank you, Convener. We have notification that Councillor Nimmo has withdrawn from the committee, and we also have apologies from Provost Bissett and Councillor Colley. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That takes us to item 2 in your agenda, which is declaration of interest. And just for clarity, I'll read this out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interests they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? None online. Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to item 3, which is the minutes. 3A, minute of meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 13th of November 2024. It's pages 3 to 5 in your agenda papers. Have we any questions arising from that minute? None? Agreed. Thank you. That takes us to item 3B, minute of meeting of the planning predetermination hearing held on the 2nd of October 2024, pages 6 to 14 on your agenda papers. Any questions arising from that minute? You agree the minute? Agreed. Thank you. That takes us to item 3C, minute of meeting of the planning predetermination hearing held on the 24th of September 2024, and it's pages 15 to 23 in your agenda papers. Any questions arising from that minute? None? Okay, thank you. That takes us to item 3D, minute of meeting of the planning predetermination hearing held on the 7th of May 2024. It's pages 24 to 30 on your agenda papers. Any questions arising from that minute? None? Agreed. Fine, thank you very much. That takes us to item 4 on your agenda this morning. Construction of 2 industrial units, Class 5, at 103 Broad Street, Denny, for Mr. Chris Verriaccia. It's a continuation. It's pages 31 to 44, and it was the subject of an earlier site visit. The report is by Mr. Brent Vivian. Brent?
Thank you, Convener. Members will recall that the committee considered this application on the 13th of November last year, when it was agreed to continue consideration of the application to allow the committee to carry out a site visit to view the physical characteristics of the site. The site visit took place on the 25th of November. Gemma will show some photos and drawings as I present this report. Is that okay, Gemma?
Okay. Thank you.
The application site lies within a mixed-use area on Broad Street to the east of Denny Town Centre. The site is occupied by an industrial building subdivided into 5 units and was previously part of a larger industrial site. Most of the buildings associated with the previous industrial use have been demolished. The application seeks full planning permission to construct 2 industrial units, which are Class 5. The larger of the units would have an attached wash bay and would face onto Broad Street, where a previous building was located. The smaller unit would be located at the rear of the site, backing onto Herbertshire Street. It is proposed to utilise the existing 2 vehicular accesses onto Broad Street, and formalised parking would be provided on the site by the marking out of 32 spaces. The planning history for the site is outlined in section 3 of your report. There was a planning permission granted in June last year for external alterations to the existing building on the site. That was a retrospective application. And more recently in November, there was a retrospective planning permission granted for the change of use of one of those units within the existing building from Class 5 to a gym. The consultation responses are summarised in section 4 of the report. No objections to the application have been raised in the responses, and the matters highlighted by Scottish Water and the Council's Environmental Protection Unit could be the subject of conditions or informatives as appropriate. The Environmental Protection Unit are satisfied with the submitted noise impact assessment. No public representations to the application have been received. Turning to the development plan, the application site lies within the urban limits and a business area with potential for redevelopment, as defined in the local development plan. The application is assessed as complying with the development plan. The proposal involves the reuse of a brownfield industrial site and the continued use of a business area with the potential for redevelopment for business and industry uses is supported, pending any redevelopment of the site for alternative uses. In conclusion, the application is considered to accord with the development plan and is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in section 9 of the report. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Brent. We have a deputation request. One is from the local councillor, Councillor Brian McCabe, and the other one is from the applicant, Mr. Chris Berriacci. How do members feel about deputation requests? Everybody agreed to them? Agreed. Agreed? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Okay then, Councillor McCabe, if you would like to step forward first, sir. You're well versed with the protocol. You'll have 10 minutes and then there'll be an opportunity for members to ask any questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Convener. Can I just advise that I've been speaking to Mr. Varikia and he's advised that he has no desire to speak. If you just want to confirm that, just to move things on, Convener, yeah. Fine, Convener, thank you. Can I right at the outset advise that I have no objection to the proposed development of the site at Broad Street as detailed in this application. Members won't be aware of prior concerns I had regarding 3 sites within Denny and Dunnipace approximately 18 months ago. It had to do with unknown, unregulated activity on each of the sites. I raised these concerns with our officers and each of the sites was visited and advice given to the site owners. Broad Street was one of the sites, albeit under a different ownership. My principal concern with the unregulated use of this site was a visible increase in traffic accessing and leaving the site. We had no knowledge of the purpose and uses of the site at that time. It's with that in mind that I'm seeking to establish definitively the permitted development stroke uses of the site to ensure that the applicant has no future planning issues raised retrospectively, and we can allow him to continue with the development of his plans for the site. I've spoken with the applicant, Mr. Varikia, who kindly invited me down to the site to discuss the application and his thoughts on the future development of the site. On site, I mentioned that I had some minor concerns regarding the access egress of the site. I mentioned that there had recently been a traffic incident involving a young girl being knocked down and a vehicle which did not stop immediately outside the Broad Street site. Mr. Varikia was unaware of the incident, but immediately told me he'd be prepared to carry out works to improve the visibility at the entrance of the site. We both then looked at the entranceway and agreed that there were changes which could be made relatively easily without great expense or disruption to the road or pavement. I am perfectly satisfied with this approach. I then further spoke with Mr. Varikia on his further proposals for the site. He informed me that he has various tenants, but had one who was being pushed for a retrospective change of use application. This was for one of the Mr. Varikia's units, which had been turned into a small gym. Again, Mr. Varikia very kindly allowed me to view the facility. It's an excellent unit, and I'm pleased to note that the change of use application has already been designated minded to grant. That's an acceptable outcome for a very welcomed asset. It has since been approved. It brings me to my reason for the calling. I'm seeking to have the site's designation clearly identified and ratified by the Planning Committee. I feel it extremely important that local councillors have an input into the acceptable development of certain sites within the local area. Councillor Colley and Councillor Kelly as local members, and yourself, convener, as a councillor nearby and well aware of the site's town centre location, should be consulted in the proposed uses of the site. I was very pleased that the meeting in December, the committee agreed to go out and visit the site just to make themselves, for those unaware of the physicality of the site. As I previously indicated, I am delighted to see that this empty, derelict eyesore of a site be returned to good commercial / industrial use at the earliest opportunity. I merely ask that the site be determined definitively as a site of mixed use, and there be minimal requirement for future change of use applications. Thank you very much, convener.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor McCabe. Just sit there for a minute. I'm going to go to members of the committee, both here and online. Has any member, both here in the premise or online, any questions to Councillor McCabe? Neil McCare.
Thanks, convener. I understand where Councillor McCabe is coming from. However, did you ask officers for clarity previously, and did you get the answer you were looking for?
Two parts to that question, Billy Kerr. I first raised the issue of the site 18 months ago. I don't believe I got a response back then as to what the kind of irregular uses of the site. And I understand, again, I don't have the information, but I think it was maybe talking to Mr. Verikia that there had been some issues with noise towards the back end of the site. I was unaware of that. Despite me raising concerns about it, no one got back to me at that time. As for this application, I didn't particularly ask any questions of the planning officer. I just raised my concerns. So, as I say, two-part answer. I don't know if that's...
My only comment on that would be if these could have been addressed prior to, well, you asked. So that's 4 months down the line where the applicant has had to wait for an answer, whether it's a yes or a no, and I think there's learning from this. I think
I take on board what you're saying, Billy Kerr. It is, the time element is a concern. I suppose that it comes down, if I could suggest, it comes down to information which we, as elected members, receive on the list is limited. And when you then, we don't get a copy, councillors don't get a copy of the planning officer's recommendation. All we get is that on the list. So when I ask, or when I call that in, that's the process that we have set up for me to call that in. If there was a way that I could have asked for, can I have a report? I could then have been able to have a look through the actual through the report and find out. As I say to you, one of my major concerns was the road access and egress onto the road, particularly when we had the wee accident that occurred on the 8th of October 2024. Had I had that information, I could then maybe have gone back to the officers and said, look, well, I've got concerns about this, the road safety issues, and could we address it? And if they were able to satisfy me at that point, then maybe I wouldn't have called it in, you know. But the fact that we don't, it's a flaw in the system. And by the way, it's not a criticism of the individual officers at all. It's maybe a criticism of the system. Yeah.
I've raised the same issue myself, and I've contacted Catherine last week. First, I was unsure. I couldn't see what exactly what was entailed. I asked the question. She gave me the answer I was looking for. I probably agree with you on the weekly list. You're not seeing exactly, and I thought it was me that I couldn't get in. We've been, but thank you very much, Councillor McCabe.
Okay. Any other questions to Councillor McCabe?
Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. Thank you. I was waiting. One similar to Councillor Kerr, and yeah, also with Catherine recently was looking at potentially calling something in, quick phone call, and we realised it was better actually not to call it in because it would allow the developer to change something which would be more acceptable, which was good. This is obviously 2 industrial units as part of the 103 Broad Street site. I'm a little bit concerned about changing all to 1 because you could get somebody, another business coming in that are not a Class 5 unit. So I don't think this is to classify the whole site. It's not just classifying these two units, but then maybe it's a question that would have been asked. You did say you didn't speak to them. If you'd maybe spoke to the officers, that maybe could have been answered for you at that point.
Again, 2 parts to it, Councillor Bowes. When I visited the site and met with Mr. Varrikia, I was annoyed to find out that he had to submit 2 retrospective applications, which basically doubles the fee for Mr. Varrikia and one of his tenants. So in learning of that it was a change of use that was involved in the unit, which was changed into a gym, it raised the whole question of a change of use for the site. I mean, I suppose I'm trying to make the committee aware that what we did have was an industrial site which had the 1 designation. We are now classifying this site for multiple use, and that's really, I suppose, the fundamental thing that we can.
Can I add to that? Would that not be a good thing because then it allows the site, to have more flexibility in getting people in, rather than you'd said earlier on you were looking to classify the entire site as one thing. I think that would be against business. I think it would hurt the potential business of the site if you classified it all as one. Whereas if you're leaving it open to be that there can be various ones, then I can see that would give the people who run the site, it would give them a chance to get full units, and obviously then that brings jobs. And then I've got to say well done on your work going down and seeing Mr. Varrikia. That's great. But I'm sort of a little bit, Brian, I wish this had gone earlier rather than going to a site visit, because I think it was quite a strong proposal, being honest with you. And I just ask that as James has said, and as I do as well, and I'm sure others do, go and speak to the officers. They're very helpful, especially Catherine, because it was Catherine I was dealing with as well. I'm sure she'd maybe tidy that up and would allow the development to move forward.
Just to clarify, I'm not asking that the site be specified for 1 use. What I was wanting to make, and I think it actually happened with the site visit by the planning committee, that the site be recognised as a multiple use site, so that what it did is it allowed Mr. Varrikia now to know that he has the ability, he's not limited in purely industrial. It could be Not
If
retail.
if they change the classification, they're always going to have to go for planning. So I get what you're thinking, and I get where you're going with it. But if you have 4 units and there are different classifications in each unit, each one has to get approval for that classification. And Mr. Varika is quite right, has went for retrospective on certain ones. Obviously better to do it beforehand. I'm not a fan in retrospective, but at least he's done the retrospectives on them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, just to pick up on the change of use aspect, on not the application we're talking about at the minute, but the other, the unit which did receive a change of use. There was actually there was 2 planning applications at the time which were very similar, within 100 metres of one another, both for the change of an industrial unit into a gym. One of them was refused. That was my concern as well. That one has been refused, that Mr. Varika's tenant could potentially have been refused as well. That detail like that wouldn't really come out without perhaps calling it in. And again, coming back to Bailey Kerr's position, where we actually do see full sight of a full report, with those details, being aware of those details, that allows me then to address the issues that I'm bringing in front of the committee.
Okay, thank you. Any other direct questions to Councillor McCabe regarding his submission, both here or online? Any questions? No. Okay, Councillor McCabe, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Convener.
Now, initially, members had agreed to deputation requests from Councillor McCabe and the applicant, Mr. Chris Baricia, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Mr. Baricia, where are you? You in the? Could you come forward and just stand over there, sir, just for a minute, just to ensure that we do this properly. So just stand there. You're fine. So you don't want to speak to the committee. That's fine. Okay, we just need that formally done. Thank you very much, sir. What we'll do at this stage is we'll go back to Brent Vivian, our planning officer. Brent, you've heard what Councillor McCabe had said and the questions that were asked. Is there any further information you would like to give to the committee?
Thank you. Yeah, there's probably 2 aspects really here just to touch on. First, the existing building on the site, a long-standing industrial building. Councillor McCabe's quite right. There's been some changes of use within that building. One of the units is now a Class 11 gymnasium, and I think several of the units are actually used for Class 6 storage or distribution. You don't require planning permission to go from Class 5 to Class 6. So that building is now a mixed-use building. Obviously, any future changes of use within the building would be considered in terms of whether they require planning permission or not. And if they do require planning permission, they would be considered against the relevant policies in the development plan. In terms of the remainder of the site, any proposal for new buildings on the site would require planning permission, in which case you would consider the relevant policies in the development plan. The site is designated as a business area with potential for redevelopment, as I said previously, and pending any proposals to redevelop the site for alternative uses, business and industrial uses on the site would continue to be supported. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much for that. I went on site. I was very impressed with the site. Obviously, as Councillor McCabe said, this is only a few hundred yards for the school, the new Deer Road there as well, the possibility of a major development coming up, and obviously the accesses were very important for any future development. I was very impressed with the site, and I would formally move to grant this application. But before I do that, I'll ask Councillor Murtagh to come in.
No, thank you, convener, and I'm happy to second you in that proposal. I did sort of have some questions, and perhaps Brent's kind of answered them partly. But what the questions that were raised by Councillor McCabe in terms of what his deputation were, I wonder whether the officers, perhaps Mr Henderson, could comment about what this committee would be able to achieve, because I think that's what was asked by Councillor McCabe in terms of his intentions to bring this to committee. And as we heard there, obviously each individual unit, if there was a change, would require future planning permission. And I think that what would be important to establish at this point is that, you know, the reason it's that committee, as Councillor McCabe has said, was for those intentions. But I don't think that it would be within our gift of a motion as members to really do that within any motion that we could put forward. So I just wanted officers to clarify that for me, please.
Bring in Mr Broadley, because Mr Henderson's unavailable at the moment. Thank you, Mr Broadley.
Thank you, convener. Through you, thank you, Councillor Murtagh. I'm aware Mr Henderson stepped out of the room at the moment, but I would tend to agree with you there. I think the members of the Planning Committee have an application in front of them, and that's for determination today. I think any other Councillor McCabe was mentioning sort of wider practice. I think that would be taken out with in workshops and any review of the system in general. I don't think that's what's before the committee today. It's for determination of this application in front of you. And I'm aware I'm also not Mr Henderson, the council's legal officer, so I would caveat that answer with that, Councillor Murtagh. He may well be shortly, but I think that's the substantive business of the committee today.
Okay, I mean, and that's helpful, but I think, you know, I like Councillor Kerr and Councillor Bruce, I understand the reasons that Councillor McCabe has brought these forward, and I don't disagree that those are substantive concerns as a local member. I do note that we do have some development proposed within the system. And I think what I would like to say at this point is that this could be an example that we can say, you know, from committee discourse, where perhaps when you get a list on a Friday and you have 1 week to call it in, and you know you need to obtain discussion with the very helpful planning officers, but potentially look at report, that maybe isn't always conducive to a situation where you can make a decision about whether to call it in or not. Although I do know in the past that members have called something in and then withdrawn that call in when further information was then assessed. But perhaps we could look at this within our review when we're looking at some of our procedures, because like you know, Councillor Kerr and Councillor Boyce have highlighted, this will not only cost potential applicants time, money, business, etc. It also costs the committee cumulatively thousands of pounds over the course of the year to be considering applications in this way that might not necessarily need to be called in. So I wanted to make that point at this juncture, as it's a good live example that we could bring forward. Thanks, convener.
Thank you for your input. Just to say, is there any other questions that I've already moved? And I'll move to grant this application now, formally.
Agreed.
Is everybody agreed? Everybody agreed? I think we'll just maybe have to wait for a few minutes to get Mr Henderson coming back. Here he is. Just to let you know that members grant the application. Okay, unanimously. Fine, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. That takes us to item 5 on your agenda this morning: construction of restaurant and 12 holiday lodges, upgrading and extension of storage building, construction of a play area and associated access, parking pass, groundworks and landscaping at Blacklock Fishery Lime Rig Falkirk for REWD Group. This was a continuation. It's pages 45 to 75 and it was the subject of a site visit. Mr Vivian.
Thank you, convener. Members will recall that the committee considered this application on the 13th of November last year. As Bailey Buchanan said, when it was agreed to continue consideration of the application to allow the committee to carry out a site visit to view the physical characteristics of the site. The site visit took place on the 25th of November. The application seeks full planning permission to construct a restaurant and 12 holiday lodges upgrade and extend the existing boathouse on the site, and undertake associated works such as construction of a play area, provision of car parking and landscaping. The site lies adjacent to Black Lock to the south of the B825, near its junction with the B8022 at Limerig Village. There is a private woodland area between the B825 and the site. Vehicular access is via a private track off the B825 at the western end of the site. The site itself is currently used for recreational fishing, connected to the lock, with rental boats for angling as well as water-based activities. There is an existing boathouse providing equipment storage, toilets and changing facilities, and an existing jetty for boat mooring. The site is relatively flat and large expanses of it are covered in compacted gravel and hard standing. The application is accompanied by a number of supporting documents as set out in paragraph 1.7 of the report. Gemma, would you mind sharing the visuals that probably provide the best way of understanding or appreciating what the development will look like? So that's sort of an aerial view, if you like, looking down onto the site. The restaurant and boathouse are in red at the right-hand end of that image, and you can see a row of holiday cottages extending along the contour to the left of the restaurant building. Thank you. The consultations are summarised in section 4 of the report. No objections have been raised in the consultation responses. Although the Council's Roads Development Unit have road safety concerns that pedestrians may choose to walk on the B825 to access the site due to the condition of the woodland paths and absence of lighting within the woodland path network between the site and the village. The Council's business gateway are satisfied with the submitted business and economic case, so no issues have been raised in relation to the business and economic case, which sets out the considerations around viability. There are a range of matters raised in the responses, the consultation responses that could be the subject of planning conditions or informatives. In addition, it can be noted that there are aspects of the development proposal that would require third-party approval or further procedure. For example, all proposals involving an interface with the lock, including construction methodologies adjacent to the lock structure, would require Scottish Canal's approval. And also proposals to discharge the treated foul and surface water to the lock would require Scottish Canal's approval. This recognises that the grant of planning permission is just one part of the development process, and it is often the case that a next level of technical design work is carried out and other authorisations and approvals are required subsequent to any grant of planning permission. Turning to the public representations, 11 objections were received to the application, and the matters raised in the representations are outlined in section 6 of the report and are considered in detail in section 7b.8 of the report. The concerns raised relate to matters in relation to amenity, visual impact, environmental and ecological impact, traffic impact, access and road safety, parking, services and infrastructure provision, and a range of other matters which are also detailed in paragraph 6.1 of the report. Turning to the development plan, the application site lies out with the urban village limits within the countryside as defined in the local development plan. The site also lies partly within a designated wildlife site and within a designated open space area. The application is assessed against the development plan in section 7 of your report, and it is concluded that overall the proposal accords with the development plan subject to appropriate conditions. The proposal is seen to represent a significant opportunity to reuse and enhance brownfield land near to an existing rural village, complementary to the existing water-based facilities at the site, and of a scale and design suited to the location, and with new landscaping and habitat replacement integral to the development to provide an overall positive increase in biodiversity on the site. The need for a countryside location is clearly understood as the proposal relies on the loch and its setting to provide a tourist accommodation offer with a focus on water-based leisure and complementary facilities as an enhancement to the existing water-based facilities on the site. In conclusion, the application is considered to accord with the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions outlined in section 9 of the report. I should add that a very late representation was received on Monday, which is quite extensive, so I should attempt to summarise those matters raised in the representation so you have that information before you. The representation raises a number of questions, really in response to the officer's report. They cover a range of matters. There's questions about visibility for vehicles that are turning right into the site. That matter is actually covered in the officer's report. In the comments in response to the matters raised in the public representations, the Roads Development Unit has considered that matter and have advised that there is sufficient intervisibility between vehicles turning right into the development from the B825 and vehicles travelling in a westbound direction. There's questions around how the council could potentially consider approving this application without detailed information and approvals in place in relation to the foul and the surface water discharges. As I said, the proposals at this stage to treat those discharges before going into the lock. And I did touch on that in my presentation, where it is normal practice for there to be aspects of more detailed technical design required post grant of planning permission and for other authorisations and approvals to be required prior to any commencement of the development. The representation also raises questions about whether the proposed footbridge would be built. This is the footbridge to allow connection to the existing path network within the woodland to allow folk to to walk from the village to the site. So there's a question about whether there would just be a footbridge constructed or whether there would also be works to upgrade the existing path network to provide a suitable overall connection. My understanding is the applicant has had some initial discussions with the owner of the woodland, which is Forestry and Land Scotland, and there are positive indications that not just the footbridge would be delivered, but there would be improvements to the path network to provide a more satisfactory overall connection to the site for pedestrians. There are questions around the proposal for 5 electric vehicle charging points and whether that would be sufficient. It can be noted that that matter is also a consideration under building standards. So there would be a requirement to comply with building standards requirements in relation to that matter at the time of building warrant application. There's also questions were raised about how much electricity and water would be required to run the proposal. Concerns about the lack of 24-hour on-site management on the site, and questions in relation to some of the recommended planning conditions. There's also a question about how long is remaining on the lease from Scottish Water, from Scottish Canals for water access. I just note that it's a private matter between the leasee and or the applicant, and Scottish Canals and would not involve the council. Thank you, Convener.
Right, Brent, I've got to ask you the question. You give us a lengthy resume of the application, finishing off with the recommendation contained within the report, which is to grant the application. Consider now that you're telling the members of the committee that you've now got a lengthy representation. Obviously, we haven't seen it. We're only going with what you've been telling us there just now. Would that, can you say at this stage that your recommendation would not change with the information and the questions arising for this latest representation?
Yeah, that's correct. There wouldn't be any change to the
recommendation. Just to clarify that. Okay. Okay then. Thanks for that. Now we have a deputation. We'll have a deputation request here again. We'll have one for Miss Marion Hunter as an objector, and also we'll have Ruben Livingston, the agent. As members agreed to hear the 2 deputations? Agreed. Fine, thank you. This is now an opportunity for Miss Marion Hunter to come forward. Thank you. Jim will assist. Thank you, Jim. Miss Hunter, just to let you know, you'll have 10 minutes, okay? And then you'll be just stay where you are. There'll be an opportunity then for members to ask you any questions in relation to your submission, okay? So whenever you're ready, you'll have 10 minutes for you to start. If you press your wee button there, you'll be online.
Yeah. My family and that, we own the land next to Blacklock, the Lock End, all the land around Lock End. And what we are more concerned about, you cover quite a lot of points that I put in is already. We're more concerned about the health and safety and welfare of the animals and the people, because of not having any security or people on at night. So how they're going to maintain people with safety and well-being for that part. That's the main bit, and I've also put a few in to talk about what's going to happen with the rest of it. Another concern I've been seeing with the last lot they put in was about the road. What is going on there with the road, because they have right of access in and out the road, but they've seen them put in, they're going to enlarge the road and things like that. I'm talking about the track road from the Blacklock to the end of the road. I just see what's happening there, and with people who own that road have had no comment or no information back to them what they're actually going to do before they touch their the road. It doesn't belong to them, but they only have right of access. That's my main point, because I've already put in the other complaints to the council.
Obviously, we'll be waiting on Mr. Livingston, the agent, coming forward, and obviously there are a lot of questions that members will be asking him in relation to maybe what you had brought up yourself in relation to the health and safety aspect, and obviously the track road, because we went along the track road when we went up there for the site visit. Okay, then I'm going to open it up to members. Any questions at this stage to Ms. Hunter? I see somebody right at the very end.
Thanks, Convener.
Councillor Forrest.
Hi, Mrs. Hunter. I just got a couple of questions for you. You own the road down to the main road?
Yes.
And you allow them access from there to the gate, which allows access into the...
Yeah, when we purchased it a few years, 20 odd years ago, at that time we didn't know, so we had to get a lawyer involved to find out that we owned the road. So that is, yes, we own the road, and what the lawyer has told us that everybody has right of access to the road, but we belong to the road. So they had to investigate because nobody told us, wasn't on the title deeds at the time. But then the people who were in before the Blacklock Resort, that was all worked out with them, with the prior owners, that they had right of access and things like that.
Right. And who maintains it?
At the time when, before the Blacklock, the ones that this is the fishery, they said to in the agreement with them that they would just fill in the potholes because they use the transport more than anybody else, and they said they would just fill the holes in because obviously our vehicles are damaging the road.
Right. Obviously, with the road being used a lot more, there will be more than just a few potholes this time.
Yes, it's getting quite a lot more now. Yes.
And the recommendation is that there should be a splay in both directions, 4.5 metres by 90 metres. That would obviously impact on your land your field.
We haven't. The only thing we've seen is what is someone had actually said to me to look on the council website. I've only spoken to them once by an email, the Black Resort, and that's been at the site survey, but we've never heard from them. But nobody's actually came and said that we're thinking of doing this. It was all seen on the council's application.
Right. We've got that up to date, right? I feel sorry for any farmer who loses animals through other people's negligence or sheer spite. There's a case in the Borders. I think it was last week where 2 horses were slaughtered for no reason. The security for your site would therefore be paramount because you don't know how many people are going to come around that.
We've had people opening gates. They've had cattle getting out onto the main road, and we don't go wrong. Cows can jump fences.
Can they?
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Yes, there's some we try to maintain all the fencing for that, but they can get spooked, and people leaving gates open and leaving litter. We've had lost 2 cows where they've swallowed paper bags. So it's just to try to see what's going on there, and nobody's there at night. What's going to happen, kind of thing. Yeah,
I had heard about a cow swallowing a helium balloon.
Yeah, that's our neighbour. He lost one that way as well.
So security, you're obviously going to have to get security because you can't be up and about at all times. So
but we need to know what is going on, and on the drawing, I don't see anything, any staff places.
So that would that have a financial impact on you?
Yes, if we had to lose animals or try to maintain, or we can't really move them right next door. The fence, only a fence and a road between the 2 areas. So it's the kind of thing we can't move them. We need to put them out to graze. So then we bring them in the winter. But yes, there's nothing on any of their plans what they're actually going to do, maintain to see what's going to happen for the animals, even for the people's well-being, because if they're out and about, who's going to be there if they get in trouble?
Okay, thank you for those answers. I had a good inkling on how it would be, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
I've had it clarified. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forrest, for your input. Any other questions from members, both here or online, in relation to Marion Hunter? None? Okay, then you can go back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And it's an opportunity now for Robin Livingston, the agent, to step forward. Okay then, gentlemen, first of all, if you could introduce yourselves and say who you're representing, then you'll have 10 minutes between you, and then there'll be an opportunity for members of the committee, both here and online, to ask any questions to your submissions. Okay?
Thank you, Convener. Just bear with me a second while I get a presentation up.
Right, no problem.
Thanks for your patience, Convener.
Okay, you just introduce both of you and carry on 10 minutes from now.
Thanks. So my name's Robin Livingston from Fraser Livingston Architects. We are the agents on behalf of the applicant.
Hi, my name's Laurie Duncan. I'm one of the co-founders, owners and directors of REWD Group, which is REWD Group, which stands for Real Estate Wealth Development. We are a local business started up by a couple of local lads. That was myself and Mr. Alex Robertson. We're based just at Earlsgate roundabout and now employ 18 staff. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. We're keen to convey why this is a fantastic opportunity, not just for the site itself, but also the Lyme-Rigg community, Falkirk Council, as well as Scottish tourism and the leisure space generally. Robin's going to advise on more of the kind of technical aspects of the project, but I figured that it would be useful for myself to give you a bit more of an insight into who we are, what we do, and ultimately why we are a credible developer for this site. So this is our corporate structure chart you can hopefully see on the screen. On the left-hand side, this is our investment side, which is all focused on residential buy-to-let property. We own over 300 properties now across Scotland with an asset value of 25 million and a monthly rental of around £160,000 per month. On the right-hand side, we have the trading arm of the group, and here we offer property consultation services, estate agency, property auctions, project management, as well as the developments business, which is ultimately where the Blacklock project sits. Turnover for the group in the 24-25 financial year will be around about 4 million. That's to March 2025. Now, you may or may not know, but we recently redeveloped the Temperance Cafe in Falkirk. That was neglected office space. We converted to 6 residential flats. That's just off Lint Riggs on Falkirk High Street. We've also recently finished the South Bellsdyke Farm project, which was an extension and conversion of 2 different dwellings we combined into one. Beautiful big farmhouse there now, and that's just off the roundabout at Skinflats. I mention these projects just because they're local and you might recognise them, but ultimately we are operating on a national scale, doing all sorts of refurbishments and developments up and down Scotland. In terms of the Blacklock project, we're looking at an investment of around 4 to 5 million, something like that, a significant investment in anyone's book. But ultimately that really just shows our seriousness and commitment to the development. As you can see from our existing operations, we don't have any issues with funding. The same guys that have supported us to get to where we are now will continue to support us through this project. I think it's important just to mention some of the infrastructure improvements we're looking at. We mentioned the security. It is our intention to have the site manned 24/7, 365 once we are on site. There's obviously the historical congestion issue on the main road in Limerick for the residents. With the addition of our 100-odd car parking spaces, we look to address that. This is also a sustainable development project, right? It's a very technical project. There's a lot of insight that Robin will now bring to the table. So I think at this stage I'll hand over to Robin, but thanks again from me for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Laurie. I just wanted to reiterate some of the items that Brent Vivian had touched upon. It's a brownfield site, former light industrial uses, but it's in a great location. It's a beautiful setting, and it's the heart of the Central Belt. So we see this as an opportunity to tap into not just local, but regional as well as national tourism opportunities. The existing site is scarred with the previous operations, so former fisheries, but also coal mining activities. So, but there is also an operation already there. So there's a fisheries, an established fisheries leisure opportunity, water sports activities, and we're really looking to augment and enhance those operations. So the setting just sits to the north, northwest of the loch. The opportunities there opening up to the south, views to the loch, as well as obviously getting sunny aspects and creating stitching the new development into the wider core path network and the landscape more generally. You'll see there's from the site plan there's quite a narrow corridor of development. So in the eastern corner is the existing boathouse and the jetty. We're looking to create a little public-facing space which has a cafe restaurant which augments the boathouse. People coming to use the fishery can also use the cafe restaurant. Locals can come and use the cafe restaurant coming through the walks through the woodland. Skipping ahead. We're also forming significant designated parking to try and help with existing parking issues in Limerick through people parking on the main road, as well as play space, and then the 12 lodges strung out along the access road to the north. You'll see this area to the south. It's an area of sensitive ecology. We're retaining all of that and enhancing it through further measures through our landscape architect and ecologist on the team. The other important aspect to say in terms of a design is we fully understand the sensitive nature of the setting. So we turned the lodges so they were fingers on the skyline, so you could see through the lodges rather than turning them to create a wall of development. So we're still trying to get that balance between built form as well as the features of the natural landscape. So you can see here an existing and a proposed view. You can see the lodge fingers stretching out with the living spaces facing onto the loch. And this is from the west looking east towards a new cafe restaurant which has got a sort of a civic presence, drawing people through to the new operation as well as the lodges to the left-hand side. And then the existing site, as the planning officer said, there's been a lot of hardcore build-up on the site, particularly in and around the entrance. There was a lot of transportation feeding the fisheries historically, and then a very large area, and you can see the sort of scarring of the previous operations. So we're looking to repair and enhance that natural landscape with new tree planting, new biodiversity measures, whilst also hopefully creating a new development that can bring economic activity and support the Falkirk's economic strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. It'll be open up to members now. I'm going to come in right away because obviously we've just heard from the objector in relation to a number of issues. One of them I'm going to touch on, and I'm going to bring our legal representative, Mr. Henderson, in, was the fact about the ownership of ground, etc. So I just want to clarify that situation right away. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Convener. Ownership of land is not a material consideration. Just reading from our textbook on planning, the applicant's lack of ownership of part of the site is not a material consideration. The planning authority's function is to decide whether or not the proposed development is desirable in the public interest. The answer to that question should not be affected by the consideration that the landowner is determined not to allow the development. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you for that. That's just to clarify that point. There are other issues which you briefly touched on during your submission, but I'm going to go back to them because obviously the objector is concerned about a number of issues, health and safety. Now, obviously, in your presentation, you stated that the area was going to be manned 24/7 with security, right? So maybe just elaborate on that a bit. Will this be during construction phase as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, at this stage, obviously, we don't quite know specifics because we're not at that point yet. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously been a bit of antisocial behaviour on the go as well recently with the site being closed. It wasn't viable for us to keep it open during the planning phase. But that's one of the first things we would address as soon as we got on site. Fine.
The other thing, because I was one of the individuals from the planners that went up to the site visit and found it very beneficial, especially when you're just looking at sketches and drawings. Thought it was very, very beneficial. And one of the questions was in terms of the access coming in relation to the Marion Hunter had stated quite clearly about the potholes. Now that road is pretty drastic in some areas. So what's your plans for that?
Again, from me, first of all, health and safety obviously is paramount to everything that we do. So, you know, it's important that, those are addressed. And obviously, you know, part of the application involves the likes of improvements of the roads as well, with the passing places and this type of thing. So these are things that will be immediately addressed, absolutely.
Fine. One other question before I bring any of my colleagues in is jobs. nobody's mentioned jobs. So how many jobs is this going to support the community for, in terms of obviously the construction section first, and then once you're up and running, if you're successful with the application, once you were up and running, how many jobs would this cater for?
Again, we don't probably have specifics yet, because we might run the operation, we might sublet the likes of the restaurant and cafe to an alternative business owner to run that side of the site. So specifics are unknown, but 10 to 20, I would say.
10 to 20, okay. That's enough from me then. I'm going to move it on to my colleagues. Any Councillor Forrest.
Surprise. I thank you for your information. We heard from Mrs. Hunter there about the well-being of our animals, the security of it. Would you be interested in supplying her with some sort of recompense towards her security? Because after all, if your site wasn't there, she wouldn't require enhancements.
I think that, again, security is paramount, so whatever that looks like, it's not something we've addressed directly as yet, but happy to take a look, of course.
So you would have a look at that?
Absolutely, whether it's some type of recompense or it's an improved security situation, it's as important for us to not have any interference with our site as it is for her to protect the animals and her site. So I think that's in both of our interests, no problem.
Absolutely.
Councillor Forrest, could I just say at this stage that the question isn't really a planning issue, it was more are you asking in relation to a compensation issue here, well, which isn't planning. Thank you, sir.
The second part ties in with this, and it also ties in with what Mr. Henderson had said, that although the land ownership isn't paramount here, one of the conditions is that you should have a splay in each direction, which would impede on her property again and again. This would not be required by her, so I was wondering once again if that would be the case, if you would do something to recompense her for loss of.
Paul, if you just hold on a minute, I'll bring Mr. Henderson in just to clarify. I mean, the question is fair. But the fact is that in terms of planning, we've got to ensure that we're sticking to planning procedures. And it is a question that I think Mr. Henderson can maybe clarify.
Thank you, Convener. As I noted earlier, the decision by the planning authority shouldn't be affected by the fact that a landowner is determined not to allow the development to take place on their land. But it may be that the applicant does have some comments on that point, but from the planning authority's point of view, that would be a matter for the private parties to resolve between themselves.
Thank you for that, Mr. Henderson. There is the one other part of this that I would like clarification on. The actual access is out onto the main road, which is not part of Falkirk Council's, it's actually North Lanarkshire's. Can we, as a planning committee, impose a condition such as 4.5 metres by 90 metres in each direction on the applicant when it is not onto our roads?
Mr. Henderson.
Thank you. I may pass on to Mr. Vivian, because I note from the report that there is clear reference to dialogue that took place with North Lanarkshire Council, and they were invited to provide comments on the application. And I think there is actually an informative that Mr. Vivian might be able to speak to included in the recommendation.
Thank you, Brent.
Yeah, that's correct. We did consult North Lanarkshire Council on the application. They actually support the provision of visibility displays at the junction, and that they should be maintained at 4.5 metres times 90 metres. And they have asked for an advisory note to be attached to any grant of planning permission, basically inviting the applicant to approach them and seek any advice regarding any requirement to submit a planning application to North Lanarkshire Council for works to the private road.
So even though this is not on our land, it's not attaching onto our land, it's attaching onto private land, the planning permission for that junction would actually have to go to another authority for them to pass. Is that correct?
If there's any physical works to the private road, and obviously we're anticipating that through perhaps widening of the road, that work would potentially require some input or approval from North Lanarkshire Council. There is a condition recommended that before any development work could start on the site, that any approved upgrade works to the road would need to be in place. So that would all have to be resolved before any development could commence on the site.
Right, thank you. You said before any work could progress within the site, that had to be done.
Yes.
The site also cannot get further explored until the work to identify where the mine workings are. So which comes first, the road or the finding of the mine workings?
It's any development works.
So the road must be done first before anything else can be done. Thanks.
You could do site investigation work,
right?
Because that wouldn't come under the terms of development. So you could do that. You could do site investigation work in relation to contaminated land and coal mining legacy issues. But in terms of the actual physical development that's been approved through this application, that couldn't start until the agreed upgrade works to the private access had been implemented.
Okay. Thank you for that. Sorry, gentlemen, back to you again. Sorry about that, but we're getting there. One of the plans I see is a hot tub for each of the lodges. It's 12 hot tubs. They get changed. The water should get changed over after each guest changeover, basically. So an average of maybe 2 a week, something. Hopefully 3 a week if you're going to be that busy. The capacity of the hot tubs, water-wise, 1,000 litres, is that roughly the idea?
They would be domestic sized. They're an ambition as a draw, as a feature, recreational feature. We fully appreciate that there's health and safety executive guidance on how we treat the water used through commercial development, and all that would be in place, to fulfil the obligations as a commercial operation. I'm
just trying to work it out in my head.
Yep.
The 2 or 3 changes over 1,000 litres per hot tub per week. You're talking about 25,000 litres of chlorinated water.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. Which brings me to the next bit. I'm sorry about this, because usually when we go out on a site visit, it answers a whole load of questions. In your case, it opened up a heck of a lot. So I really need to get to the bottom of this. Your first option would be gravity-fed water into the loch. But Scottish Canals and SEPA say that they would not, hang on, what's the wording? SEPA guidance for foul water discharge. Right. There would be a presumption against a discharge into the freshwater loch and sewage discharge direct into the canal under SEPA guidance for foul water discharge. So if you're going to put in a water treatment plant, there's nothing on the maps. It's 24,000 litres of chlorinated water, plus the amount of water from the restaurant, the cafe, showers, etc. That's one heck of a size of a sewage distribution or a fill water decontamination centre, which is what you would require. So your second choice would be to pump it along the road and into the Lime Rig sewerage system. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So there's two options. The option we'd prefer is a more passive approach. It's essentially more environmentally friendly, avoids the need for lots of additional pipe work up adopted roads. So we'd like to treat it on site if possible. Scottish Water have confirmed if we have to go back to the approach where we connect into the adopted network, Scottish Water have confirmed there's capacity there. We've already consulted with them through a pre-development application, and they've confirmed that they have no objections to the development and the capacity is there. If we can get approval, and we've liaised on a series of occasions with Scottish Canals, because obviously they own the water, we have to go through quite a rigorous and intensive technical design process. Our engineers that have done the schematic designs up to this point essentially use what's called what would be a large septic tank, which would have the capacity to deal with and cope with the demands of the site and development, including any hot tubs. And it would go through a three-phase approach. So it goes through a more built tank system, and then it's filtered through three phases, including a small section of reed bed before it would be then discharged into the water. But I think it's important to say that ultimately we would need Scottish Water's approval for that. Scottish Canals approval for that, and that would be one of the many technical aspects that we would explore upon an approval.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just add that there's also a third option, which is to not have hot tubs or to have less hot tubs. So these types of technical considerations, commercial considerations, are ones that we would have a bit further down the line as well.
Okay, it's just that I'm going by this, and this is what you're saying at the moment. The problem with the reed beds, etc., is you're not a million miles away from Black Loch Moss, which is a site of special scientific interest. And any discharge, especially if it was the raining, midsummer, something like that, we're going to get the excess, and that could spoil it. The reason all this came to be was when we actually did the site visit. I wasn't aware that there was a snack bar and there were showers there, toilets, and obviously that's anything that's being used for that is going into the water right now, and there's no water treatment plant.
I would say, just an answer to that, the applicant has inherited an existing setup, and what we're trying to do is obviously improve that and ensure that it meets all technical aspects and approvals. So we wouldn't be continuing that approach if that is the case. I'm not personally aware that was the case, but I know there will be some sort of septic tank there. I don't know where it feeds or how it's discharged currently.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Security, as a councillor, I'm sorry, this is getting, there are a lot of questions, as I said, 24/7, but in the paperwork it said that it would be, there would be someone during the day, and then it would be onto CCTV, and then a telephone number should they need it. That's no 24 hours a day.
I hope you can appreciate that when we are on site and we are in construction phase and we have materials, there's a lot of different reasons we would want to protect our site at that stage. So from my perspective, it makes a lot more sense to have the site manned 24/7, 365.
It's just I'm trying to get your views on these things, and thanks to my colleagues for putting up with this as well. You said that the locals would be coming along through the woods, so you're going to have a play area, which is great. But it said that the woodland walks couldn't guarantee they would be maintained. Would that be changed?
I think the only comment on that is that we can only control what's within the ownership of the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
We have had conversations that had a recent meeting last summer on site with Scottish Forestry and Land, I think they're now called. I always forget the new name. And we've already spoken to them previously about the formation of the bridge connection across, because there's a ditch, and as long as we fulfil, we work towards their design standards through either forming a bridge and footpaths, we see that as a great opportunity, because it can allow locals from Limerick Village as well as the wider area to walk through the woodland and actually access our site in a more accessible way.
Okay, and finally, you'll be pleased to hear that. Finally, right? You say that you've got the lodges like fingers so that it'll look good against the sky. But I had heard that these trees at the back of the lodges were actually due for felling within the next year or 18 months. Have you checked that out? Because that would change the entire outlook.
I know with the way Scottish Forestry and Land run their operations, they do selective tree felling across their wider land ownership. But what they do is they do it selectively, and it grows back and re-establishes. Again, we can't control what they do in to the north area, but I know there's been a lot of tree felling in the wider region over the last couple of years since we've been involved in the application. It's really something that we would have to liaise with them on.
Gentlemen, thank you for your forbearance. It's cleared up an awful lot of things I had. Thank you.
Thank you for your input there. It was invaluable, Councillor Forrest. Now, I'm going to bring in Councillor Murtagh, but before I bring her in, just to let you know that it's been stated to me quite clearly that in terms of regulations, that the question times is around 10 minutes. Well, it's been more than 10 minutes, but it's up to the convener to use discretion. So I'm going to use discretion. Councillor Murtagh has been waiting a long time. Councillor Murtagh, questions directed to the both representatives here, and there'll be questions to Mr. Vivian once we've finished this state. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, convener. I'll try not to repeat anything that Councillor Forrest has already asked on, but I did have concerns about the foul water contamination and how that's treated. I think they've mostly been dealt with, and I can pick up with officers as to regulation. You did mention in terms of the car parking that's been provided, and that's in addition, from what I can see on the plans, to car parking at the proposed holiday lodges themselves. But you said that you intended that would enhance, in effect, the existing use of the loch and some of the concerns which currently, are experienced by the village because of parking along the main road. So just wanted to ask you, in terms of other users, whether that's people coming to do, activity on the water, wild swimming, walking, whatever, are you intending to put any restrictions on, for example, you can only park there if you, attend the cafe or that kind of thing, or are you just saying that car parking is available without restriction to any user, and whether there's timings on that, whether the car park would be, like the main car park would be closed at any points? Can you give some clarity on that, please?
It's a good question. We've not really can come at it from that angle. We certainly there's designated bays. There's 2 parking bays per lodge, and you come off and park at the lodge entrance. There's then the larger cluster that sits next to the cafe restaurant area and boathouse. I don't think there's a wish, because as explained earlier, we really want locals to come and use this facility. The cafe restaurant will thrive if locals do use it, and so I certainly don't foresee restrictions being placed in that way. But obviously, if someone comes and tries to park up and pitch a tent, I think that becomes a different matter. So I think there just maybe needs to be a management regime in place with that in that regard.
I think, sorry, just to add on that as well, as Robin says, but commercially, we want as many people coming at the site as possible, and that's only going to be better for the operational businesses there, such as the restaurant and cafe. And so it's certainly not foreseen there would be any restriction on that, and overall that should help with that congestion, like we mentioned.
Thanks, Convener. And I suppose I do want to pick up a little bit on whatever solution in terms that comes in terms of the foul water discharge, and you mentioned a number, and may ask officers about the conditions and how that was monitored. But I suppose my concern would be that whatever solution you come to, how that will be monitored, and whether the conditions that are on in terms of beginning of works until that's sorted are clear. But one of my concerns is in terms of respecting the other uses of the loch, the active monitoring of that to ensure. I know that we've had previous sites, and Councillor Bowes and I will recall ones where the connection of what was supposed to happen to discharge into suds ponds or to other ponds, etc., wet waterways, perhaps wasn't as it should have been. And I'm just concerned that given the special site of scientific interest, etc., that if you can give some sort of outline about how these things will be monitored in terms of your output into those over and above what the regulatory aspects would be, because it's key to the viability of the site.
We have had early discussions with Scottish Canals, and we liaised with them. We presented to them 3 times. We have had technical discussions with their internal engineers. That's what prompted me to state earlier the technical approval process. The water itself is owned by Scottish Canals. There's obviously a boundary at which the water blurs with the applicant's ownership. I know they have a rigorous process because I've seen the spreadsheets and the questions and technical design process that requires to be approved. And I would be amazed if that wasn't a key part of that in terms of monitoring the quality. I think that's what you're getting at, the quality of the water generally, and if there is any implications to the development on that, there would be a red flag process, I'm sure, that would be triggered at that point. I don't see any reason why there couldn't be some sort of regular regime of just monitoring that and testing the water, because it is a working fisheries anyway, and it's a stocked loch. So that will be part of that process as well.
Thank you. I'll pick other things up with officers, but thank you, Convener. And thanks to the
Thank you. Now that's 25 minutes we've been asking questions to these 2 gentlemen. Is there anybody else got any questions before we bring our officer back? No questions? Both here? No? Fine. Thank you very much, gentlemen. You can retake your seats. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. It's an opportunity to go back to our officer, Brent. Brent, you've heard the submission from the agents. You've heard the questions coming forward from members. Have you been maybe like to give us a sort of overview of what you've just been listening to? Thank you.
I don't know whether I've really got a lot more to say just now. I mean, obviously, a lot of the questions were directed to the applicant, and from my perspective, I think you've probably had fulsome and confident responses to those questions. So unless there's anything specific that you want me to pick up on at the moment, I don't really have anything else to say.
That's it. That's the question. This has been a long and protracted, but it's been very beneficial, especially for those who weren't there. For those who went up that day, a lot of the questions were answered visually. So is there any direct questions to our officer now that we'll listen to everybody? Councillor Forrest.
Thanks again, Brent. Sorry. And perhaps this is going to end up going across to the roads. The parking provision for 86 cars, and there's a further overflow of 27. It takes it up to 111 cars for that wee access road. Access track, plus delivery vans, rubbish motors, draymen delivering beer for the restaurant, etc. Many vehicles will be carrying their own boats or jet skis on trailers. There's quite a lot of vehicles utilising that track. Is that track actually sufficient for that quantity of vehicles?
It's Craig. We've got a roads officer there, Craig. Yep, Craig. You heard the question here, Craig, from Councillor Forrest?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. So we raised concern about the access track, and there have been some back and forth between us and the applicant about the standard of that access track. And long story short, we're looking for it to be improved, as mentioned in the report. Ideally, we would want that to be widened to accommodate 2 vehicles over its entire length. That matter hasn't been resolved yet, and I note the report contains mention of that, Convener.
Okay, thank you.
While Craig's there, could I ask him a couple of other things? Craig, the road traffic accidents, there's been 3 with injury that have been reported to the police. I know of a lot more, but that is only from Falkirk Council up to that, where that junction is, because after that it becomes North Lanarkshire Council, and we don't have any records of serious accidents from that side. Is there any way that we can gain further information?
That's a good question, Convener. At the moment, I don't know. Is the answer. We can certainly make inquiries with North Lanarkshire Council to see what they can provide. But as it stands, our accident database only contains accidents within the council area, Falkirk Council area. Okay,
and the last one, hopefully for you, is actually about the pedestrianised problem. You have highlighted the access for pedestrians there could be in danger, and that they could walk along the path and then into the woodland path, which is not going to be maintained. It's unlit, so mums with young buggies will find that a difficulty. Kids will also not adhere to the path as well as they would to hopefully going along a pavement. I see this as being a problem, and to paraphrase one of my other councillors, this is people's lives we're talking about here. This is an exceptionally dangerous bit of road, and the potential is really quite frightening. And this is part of the reason why I've asked these questions. So is there any other way that we can actually safeguard our pedestrians?
Convener, Councillor Forrest is correct. We've raised a concern about pedestrian traffic, as detailed in 4.2 in the report. There is a proposed pedestrian connection from the development heading east through the forest, then north to connect to the existing road there. As we've stated in the report, and as Councillor Forrest has mentioned, our concern is that pedestrian connection would be through an unadopted path, a path that, that with the best will in the world, it may be maintained for 2 years, it may not be maintained after that, or it may be maintained forevermore. You know, we simply don't know. The point we're trying to make is that there's no guarantee that it will be maintained as there would be if it was a publicly adopted footpath. So the concern we've raised is that pedestrians may choose, rather than to use the path through the forest, they may choose to walk alongside the B-class road. Obviously, we don't know whether that's going to be the case or not. Alternatives, you could provide a footway alongside the B-class road. That's not necessarily something we would support. It's an unlit, de-restricted road. We wouldn't necessarily want pedestrians walking through there. Another alternative could be the provision of a really good standard lit footpath from the development site east through the forest, then north through the forest. Land ownership might prevent that. I can't remember the name, Forestry Commission, they may not wish for street lighting to be provided through there. So I can't really provide a good alternative at the moment, Convener.
Thank you for that, Craig. It was just the quote in the report was which in view of the absence of pedestrian facilities in Caldercrooks Road would not be in the interests of road safety. So it was that sort of brought me to that. Thank you for your help. Thank you, Convener.
Thanks again, Councillor Porras, for your input. Going back to member, any further questions at this stage, both here or online? Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Just one brief question, probably more for Brent. There's a point in the report that about Nature Scott, I think it's 4.9, about the preliminary ecological appraisal, if I can get my words out, and the proposed mitigation, and suggests that the mitigation is secured through appropriately worded planning conditions. Now, the planning condition that I suppose that would be relevant to would be point 4. I just wanted to clarify what would be required within an appropriately worded planning condition, because I don't think I'm clear on what the appropriate wording is, because I think the report speaks a lot to the ecological impact that could happen due to the proposed development, and I take at face value what the applicant and the agent had said, where a lot of the sensitive ecology would be protected by that, but obviously, given that there will be development, there will be some form of impact there. So I wonder if that could be clarified slightly, just to ease my concerns.
Yeah, that's right, Councillor Sinclair. Nature Scott have asked for an appropriately worded planning condition to secure the ecological mitigation. So at that point, they really leave it to ourselves, you know, having the knowledge of drafting conditions to come up with suitably worded conditions. So condition 4, you're quite right, it is condition 4, which encapsulates that, where the condition does require the mitigation measures outlined in the ecological assessment to be complied with, and it goes on to require some more specific documents that were required through the ecological impact assessment to be submitted for our approval, and that includes a construction environmental management plan and also a landscape and ecological management plan. So I mean, in terms of drafting that condition, I'd have to say I'm comfortable that we've encapsulated the request by Nature Scott to cover that matter through conditions.
Okay, thanks, Convener. I think that probably, given the level of questioning we've had thus far, has covered quite a broad range of subjects. I think that covers what I would, the only additional thing that I was going to add to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sinclair. Okay then, any further questions? Councillor Murtagh?
Yeah, it's just picking up on that point really, and what the conditions say, and I think on the face of it, looking at the conditions, I feel they do give some comfort just to the issues that have been raised, but we all know this issue about if we have conditions, they have to be enforceable and they have to be monitorable. And I think that the concerns about the ecological impact, and particularly what that would mean from a water discharge point of view, it's really to try to understand how those will be monitored and how those will be ensured that they are appropriate. I know that there's officers have a great deal of experience in drafting conditions. I don't dispute that at all, but there have been concerns in the past about how those are then monitored and ensured, and I just wonder if there can be some clarity on those with respect to water and the ecological situation there.
Brent, you want to answer that one? Want to answer that?
In terms of water quality and discharge to the lock, I think the process is obviously subject to
discussion.
A third party process out with the planning application involving technical design input and authorisations by Scottish Canals. So I think and as the applicant said, that's from their understanding, that's a very rigorous process. So I think that's, in that regulatory framework, I think that's the comfort that would be provided, rather than through us trying to specifically deal with that ourselves through a planning condition.
Okay. I suppose what I'm asking as well is that, there obviously the number of conditions that are there in terms of development should not commence until these surveys have been carried out. But it's that way that if we grant planning permission with conditions and those conditions aren't satisfactorily, I think it's catching council satisfactorily met, that then planning permission, it's important for the public to understand too that would mean then that planning permission was in effect not granted if we couldn't satisfy those conditions, for example, for the design of the water discharge, or for protected species planning, or any of the other conditions. Because I think that it's granting planning permission subject to conditions is one thing, but we need to know the impact of if those things can't be overcome.
Just generally, the applicant would need to serve a notice of initiation of development onto us, giving an indication of when they intend to start work. At that point, we would then troll through all the conditions and pick up all the ones that are require approval before the development commences. So if there's no discharge of those pre-commencement conditions at that point, we would then go back to the applicant and say, well, obviously you're looking to initiate development shortly, but there's conditions that you haven't complied with, which you need to do before you can commence work on site.
Okay, I just wanted clarity on that publicly. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks once again. Well, I would just like to say this has been one of the most beneficial meetings we've had in terms of input from members and questions. For those who didn't go to the site visit, I think most of the questions that you would maybe had came forward with have been asked today. It's been very fulsome. I'd like to thank everybody concerned, including the applicant's agent and the objector, who summarised their positions very well. So after hearing everything, having gone to the site visit, and listen to the debate we've just had, I'm quite excited about this project, and I'm quite sure that the conditions that can be put on would safeguard the concerns, especially from Councillor Forrest. And I'm quite happy to formally move grant of this application subject to conditions. Thank you.
Quite happy to second the same, Convener.
Okay, just to clarify where we are, Councillor Forrest.
Sorry, Convener, late in there. While I want to see the development, I want to see it done in such a way that is going to enhance the whole area. As long as the conditions are met, I and everybody can sit down and say, right, this is how we're going to do it, such as the road must be the first thing before anything else gets done. We've heard Brent say that, but I've still got my concerns about the road safety aspect of it. It worries me a bit. And further down, if they go for option B and pump the sewage along into Limerick, there is still the problem of what happens after Limerick, because it's well documented that sewage erupts at points throughout Slamanan. And I've been there, I've seen it, and it's not a pleasant thing. So if the conditions can be, such as Councillor Murtagh says, if the conditions can be monitored, I'll reluctantly, I think I'll reluctantly abstain at this point. I don't want to go against it for the sake of going against it.
No, that's fine. I'm quite sure that we deal with applications all the time, and the important issue is if they're minded to grant subject to conditions, then you're hopeful, and I'm quite sure that the applicants' agents who were here today were listening to everything that was said, especially the long list of questions that you had gave them, and they'll be going away from here depending on what members agree to, and I'll come back to that just now. And take everything on board, as well as our officers, during that period of time before any development begins. So formally, I've moved granting the application subject to conditions. It's been seconded by Bailey Kerr. Is there anybody otherwise minded at this time?
Agreed.
Agreed? Okay then, thank you very much for that. And once again, it was a very, very fulsome debate. Thank you. What we're going to do now is we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break, and then we'll go to the next item, and then there'll be a break for lunch.
Thanks, convener. I was going to ask. 5-minute comfort break.
That was lengthy, but Okay, everybody, we're going to reconvene today's planning meeting, and in terms of the agenda, we're going to item 6, construction of stable block, tack feed room and riding arena, and formation of access road and parking utilising existing access. Okay, everybody, we're going to reconvene today's planning meeting, 76 to 84 on your agenda papers. We're going to item 6 that we have a deputation for request from the local member arena and formation of access road and parking utilising existing access. Okay, everybody, we're going to reconvene. And then that takes us on to your planning meeting, 76 to 84 on your agenda. We're going to item 6 that we have a deputation for request from the local member arena and formation of access road and parking utilising existing access. Okay, everybody, we're going to reconvene. And then that takes us on to your planning meeting, 76 to 84 on your agenda. We're going to item 6 that we have a deputation for request from the local member arena. Okay, everybody,
The proposal includes approval to summarise
because it doesn't relate to other properties, but it will change the nature of the countryside location if you have a floodlit field where you don't necessarily have one in quite an open aspect. So I suppose the question would be then, in terms of our assessment of the necessity in a countryside location, what assessment have officers done on that, and whether perhaps an advisory would come in from that, because it doesn't relate to other properties, but it will countryside ward. I can think of buildings countryside location. Maybe they're not impacting on others in terms of their sleep, etc. But where you don't necessarily have one in quite an open aspect somewhere, etc. And they do impact in terms of our assessment of the necessity in a countryside location. What countryside location element on that, and whether could officers comment on that would come in from that.
I don't think we'll come
because
back. Brent,
it doesn't relate to the properties, but countryside
to the
ward, I
lighting
should think of buildings countryside location.
Maybe
Maybe they're not impacting on others in terms of their sleep, etc. But there you don't necessarily have one quite on an aspect somewhere, etc. And they do impact in terms of
outdoor riding arenas.
the necessity in a countryside location. What countryside location element on that, and whether could officers comment on that.
Relatively low line.
From that,
in relation to the hills around it and the level of the 8.8, so that
location. Maybe they're not impacting on others in terms of their sleep, etc. But there you don't necessarily have one quite on an aspect somewhere, etc.
the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding arenas, only when the riding arenas being used. Obviously, it's not a, which from what I understand would be in relation to the hills around it and the level of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the containment there. Secondly, the temporary impact, obviously, the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding arenas, only when the riding arenas being used. On the back of the comments, it's not a which from what I understand has been designed, or will be designed to minimise the relation to the around the lighting control time. The back of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the explanations there is contained. Secondly, possibly the temporary impact, the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding areas, only when the riding arenas being used. On the back of the comments, it's not a which from what I understand being designed, certainly will be designed to minimise the relation to the around the lighting control time. The back of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the explanations there is contained. Secondly, possibly the temporary impact, the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding areas, only when the riding arenas being used. On the back of the comments, it's not a which from what I understand being designed, certainly will be designed to minimise the relation to the around the lighting control time. The back of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the explanations there is contained. Secondly, possibly the temporary impact, the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding areas, only when the riding arenas being used. On the back of the comments, it's not a which from what I understand being designed, certainly will be designed to minimise the relation to the around the lighting control time. The back of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the explanations there is contained. Secondly, possibly the temporary impact, the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding areas, only when the riding arenas being used. On the back of the comments, it's not a which from what I understand being designed, certainly will be designed to minimise the relation to the around the lighting control time. The back of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the explanations there is contained. Secondly, possibly the temporary impact, the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding areas, only when the riding arenas being used. On the back of the comments, it's not a which from what I understand being designed, certainly will be designed to minimise the relation to the around the lighting control time. The back of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the explanations there is contained. Secondly, possibly the temporary impact, the lights will not be on all the time. Outdoor riding areas, only when the riding arenas being used. On the back of the comments, it's not a which from what I understand being designed, certainly will be designed to minimise the relation to the around the lighting control time. The back of the 8.8, so that it's given certainly the explanations there is contained. Secondly, possibly the on a visit to the site.
Councillor Kelly, want in?
We did have an instance before in the same ward where we had grazing land and we refused permission. I know there was other things involved in that, but the main reason was because it was grazing land. We wouldn't allow building on it. And so it kind of
a visit to the site
makes it awkward for us to try and work out what piece of grazing land's all right to build. We did have I think that's what James an instance before in the same ward.
Okay, just to clarify where we are, we've got a motion
we refused
seconded,
permission.
and I know that
things
Councillor Flynn wants to come in. He's
involved
desperately
in
got
that,
his hand up there. Yes, sir.
The main reason
thank
was
you,
because it was
I just
grazing
wanted
land.
to
We
add
wouldn't
a
allow
quick
building
comment
on it.
regarding the lighting,
And
because
so
it's
it
obviously
kinda
had quite a bit of
a
discussion.
visit to the
I
site.
personally,
to try and work out
much to everybody's
piece of
surprise,
grazing
own a
land's
horse
all
which
right
is
to
kept
build.
in a stable for the year.
I think that's what James
And there's
mentioned
12
before in the
horses
same
in this
ward.
protected yard.
Okay, just
outside
to clarify
lighting,
where we are, we've got a motion
we
moved and
refused
seconded,
permission.
and I know that
generally,
Councillor Flynn wants to come in. He's
ride a
desperately
horse
got
for
his
more
hand
than
up
an
there.
hour,
Yes, sir.
half an hour, an hour
main
outside
reason
the arena.
was because it was
I just
grazing
want
land.
to point
We
out,
wouldn't
if
allow
you think
building
about
on
it,
it.
regarding the lighting, come
So
March,
it
April,
kinda
quite a bit. The
visit
daylight
to
hours
the
are going to
site.
go on
Makes it
till
awkward for
about
us
10
to
o'clock at
try
night. So
and
it's about
work
5
out
months
what
to
piece
everybody's
of
surprise.
grazing
On a
land's
horse,
all
there'll
right
be
to
no
build.
light
We did have,
stated
but
unless
I don't
somebody
think
wants
that's
to
what
ride
James
at
mentioned
midnight
before
or
in the
11
same
at the
ward.
protected yard.
Okay,
And the other
just
thing
to
lighting
clarify where we are,
and
we've got a motion
arena
moved and
lighting,
seconded.
small
I
yard
know that
generally
Councillor Flynn wants to come in. He's
ride the
desperately
horse
got
for
his
more
hand
than
up
an
there.
hour,
Yes,
notify
sir.
the owner of the yard and outside the usage. I just want to point out, if you think about it, regarding the lighting, come March, April, the daylight hours are going to go on till about 10 o'clock at night. So it's about 5 months to everybody's surprise. On a horse, there'll be no light stated unless somebody wants to ride at 12 or 11 hours till yard.
Okay,
And the other
just to
thing
clarify where we are, we've got a motion
the arena
moved
lighting,
and seconded.
small
I
yard
know that
generally
Councillor Flynn wants to come in. He's
ride
desperately
the
got his hand up there. Yes, sir.
the owner of the yard and outside the usage. I just want to point out, if you think about it, regarding the usage.
Please. Please.